going to get rolling. For those of you who don't know us, this is One Book, One New Orleans. I'll tell you a little bit about what we do. But as we are having this discussion, please feel free to, grab some food, grab more food. We don't want to take it home, so please eat it. I'm Megan. I'm the executive director of One Book, One New Orleans. I'm going to start out by thanking the Autocrat Social and Pleasure Club for hosting us today. Thank you so much. Huge shout out to Kimbra and Gerard and everybody else who worked together to make this happen. We are so grateful to be in this space. I'll tell you why in just a second. So for those of you who don't know what One Book, One New Orleans is, I'll give you maybe the 3-minute version. Long story short, we pick one book every year. We encourage everyone in the city to read the same book at the same time with the idea that we're going to grow stronger as a community through a shared reading experience. But when we do that, we have to recognize that approximately 27% of the adults in our city struggle with literacy. So to be One Book, One New Orleans and reach that 27%, we do a lot of outreach. I develop a curriculum around the book every year, and that curriculum and the book goes into adult education programs around the city free of charge. So it's being used to teach adults to read right now in 7 different adult education programs. It's also going into both jails and prisons. And we're actually really lucky that we get to bring the author of that book into the Orleans Parish Jail.
Sorry.
It's okay. And let the author have a conversation with the folks who are being held there. We get the book into the ears of the blind and print handicapped through a partnership with WRBH Reading Radio. And we also make sure that folks who can't afford it can access it for free by providing copies to the New Orleans Public Library. So we're always around the city bringing people together in different locations around our book by hosting free family-friendly events like the one today. And we are here at the Autocrat because it is mentioned in our 2024 selection, which is Black Creole Chronicles by Dr. Lisa Saloy. So when we asked Mona Lisa what her dream event for the year was, she said, I want to have something at the Autocrat that celebrates the 7th Ward. So here we are at the Autocrat celebrating the 7th Ward. Yay. With Dr. Saloy, Big Chief Darryl Montana, Dianne Honore, Julie Vaucresson, and Wayn Baquet Sr.
Thank you for coming. It is a great joy and pleasure. My mother and father attended dances here. The Autocrat Social and Pleasure Club has been here together 100 years. Let's give them a round of applause. And when I think of the 7th Ward, and social and pleasure clubs, you may not know this, but they're imported from West Africa. They are a direct descendant of the Africans who came here. Of course, more were sold from here than any other city in America. But social and pleasure clubs were part of secret societies. They were benevolent associations that help one another advance, educate their children, bury their dead, the way we do here. So it's not something we invented here. It's something we continue here. And so I don't know if people know that, but I just wanted to say that. So it is my honor and pleasure to honor these gentlemen for all the years that they've been doing that. I should admit that I was in a bad car accident at 21, lost my memory, was in a coma for a couple of years, and I started writing to remember. And it was, and I met indigenous people from various cultures on the West Coast. I met Latinos from various cultures on the West Coast, Asians from various cultures, and they were writing about their culture. I said, wait, I know culture. And so that began this journey. So I'm honored to be born and raised here with so much glorious culture, and we have these witnesses and participants. So next to me is the Big Chief, Darryl Montana, has masked as a masking Black Indian 51 years. And he I'm quoting him, how often will that happen? His dad did the same, masked over 52 years. So continuing generation, and he's taught thousands to mask. So we are thankful for you. And next to him is Big Queen, Dianne Honore, also of the Yellow Pocahontas. She's also an Amazon who raises money for women who have survived cancer. She too is a cancer survivor. God bless her. But she is extraordinary and does everything from encouraging people to fight global warming to embracing our culture. And they both have been spokespeople and artisans all over the world. So next to them, yes, Big Queen. And the chef of the best, Julie Vaucresson of the Vaucresson family, 4 generations of sausage makers, her husband Vance. And she's got a new cookbook. You gotta have a taste of that. But they were back after the storm, and it was such a joy to be able to come to a neighborhood spot, and they just encouraged all of us so much. So we thank you for that and for all that you do. And last but not least, Mr. Wayn Baquet. As a child, my daddy made a point of taking us to Eddie's restaurant. So baby, Eddie's was the place, and I love that he continued that with the glorious Little Dizzy's restaurant. Thank you for the best food. You can come and sit down, bring your people. It's always warm and inviting, and now even the tourists know. So Mr. Wayn Baquet. And I was reminded that he too had a cookbook. Mine drowned, so I gotta find another copy. But just so you know. So let's open this up. Y'all done heard me talk enough. So first question, tell us about your 7th Ward. How is 7th Ward home for you? And what, we'll start. Go ahead.
Me?
Yes, we'll start with you on it.
Well, everything was happening in the 7th Ward growing up. St. Augustine High School, finished in class of 65, it's a long, long time ago. In 66, my dad sold our house at 829 North Russia Blade in the 6th Ward and moved us to 2119 Law Street in the 7th Ward. And we had a restaurant in the front, and in the back was living quarters. That was the beginning of Eddie's Restaurant in 1966.
Wow.
And it really was a challenge because everybody was saying this is the home of all the great Creole food and all these people are great cooks. Well, our cooks and my family was so good at that that they were bringing their containers to get some of our gumbo and our red beans and all the other goodies. Well, that's just a small part of the story of me, my family, and the 7th Ward.
And now,
Little Dizzy's, it keeps the tradition going in a lot of different ways. We started Little Dizzy's about, I lose track of time, 20-something years ago. Actually, the name is very important to us because I sold a restaurant that I had uptown called Zachary's, and the family was talking about, you're gonna retire. I'm saying to myself, I'm not retiring. You understand? So I found this place and I bought it and I called it Little Dizzy's after my grandson Zachary Baquet, who I also named another restaurant after. And I was trying to come up with a name and I called him and I got him on the cell phone. He said, you got me, it's Little Dizzy. I said, well, a minute. So I called him up, what's up with Little Dizzy? He said, well, Papa, I'm in a band at St. Augustine. And I play the trumpet and I do it with swollen jaws. And my friends nicknamed me Little Dizzy. I said, well, we got another thing for you, a restaurant, Little Dizzy. And the beat goes on and it's like right down the street from here. And proudly so, these two people right there are the people who, the owners and operators and keeping the tradition going that my family started in the restaurant business in 19 47.
Yes.
Being that I was born in 47, I know we've been in the restaurant business for over 77 years.
Amen. Thank you.
So if you had asked me this question 3 years ago, I might have had a different answer. But since we've reopened, the Vaucresson family has been in this community for 125 years. This is our anniversary year right now.
Wow.
And when everybody, not everybody, I would say about 60% of the people that come through our door, they say it feels like home. They thank us for coming back. So my perspective has changed because I enjoy hearing the stories about, I used to come here when I was a child with my grandmother. I used to come and buy from Mr. Sonny, and Mr. Sonny would always give me something extra. If I didn't have enough money, he'd let me have it and come back and pay later. Your father-in-law paid to bury my grandson because we didn't have the money. They paid for uniforms at the school. And they want to share these stories. And I think it's because what the 7th Ward was family. It was community, people helping each other.
Yes.
It wasn't just about, you weren't on an island. It was a true village. And I get to hear these stories all day long. So my perspective has changed. It's wonderful. We changed our tagline. It's culture, community, and cuisine, because that's what it's all about. And that's what we're all about. So when people come in, if my kids are not there, they're like, well, what's going on? They want to see everybody in there, because it's like old New Orleans pre-Katrina, and that's what people want. And I think that's what my feeling of the 7th Ward is. It's more than just a place to live, not brick and mortar. It's about the people that live there.
Sweet.
Can y'all hear me okay? Because I have some vocal issues. Anyway, I guess the 7th Ward to me represents all that. I was actually born in the 6th Ward on Robertson and just up the street from where Little Dizzy's is today. And we owned a restaurant on the corner of Kellerick and North Robertson. We opened in the 50s. So I kind of grew up in that environment. I went to grade school though in the French Quarter. So I always tell, I went to Catholic school and everything. And the 6th and 7th Ward was like mostly Catholic. We all grew up Catholic. Our grandmother spoke Louisiana Creole and all that. So I always tell people I grew up with one foot in the barroom and one foot in the Catholic church. That's New Orleans.
That's New Orleans.
That's New Orleans. So, and I remember catching the bus on Esplanade and Billary to St. Louis Cathedral in the French Quarter every morning with my brother. He was 5 years older than me. So I was a little kindergartner, and I always got called stupid because I walked so slow with my big brother. But anyway, I'm also a nurse. So I stayed here to work during Katrina. And, I came back like 4 years later. I came to visit, but I came back permanently 4 years after. And one of the driving forces that took me back was I wanted to save my culture. So every single thing I do is culturally focused, whether it is, I teach at the New Orleans School of Cooking, and people, in fact, I had a post about that. People always ask me, why don't you open a restaurant again? We had some of the best, we had some really good food in the restaurant. A lot of people knew us. And I tell them, that's just too much work. It's a lot of work right now. It's a lot of work. So I admire you all tremendously. But it's like I get to teach my history to people, and I get to teach them how to cook the food. And, we cook it everything from scratch in an old-fashioned way. So that's one thing I do. I also, I do tours, presentations, whatever. So I also wanted to become more actively involved in the masking culture. We would feed the Indians, and when they would just lay people, like Tootie Montana was in in the building trade and the postmen and all these people. They were our friends and everything. But I felt like, I really wanted to help to keep the culture above water. So I became a baby doll, and then I became a black masking Indian with the legendary Yellow Pocahontas hunters. And then we found out that one of my ancestors, one of my cousins, was actually one of the first chiefs of the Yellow Pocahontas in the late 1800s or early 1900s. And he actually wrote Indian Red. So every time I hear that song, and he supposedly wrote it in prison. So I have all his prison records, but I don't know that he specifically did write it there. But history has it that he wrote it there. So, and I think I'm telling you all these little stories because that is what the 7th Ward means to me, and the 6th Ward, and that, that cluster of us, of our people, of everything that Dr. Saloy spoke about in her poetry. And it always just brings me to tears because that's my home, that's my sense of place. It's the people. It's not just the streets and the houses and the architecture. It's all those things. The culture lives in the people, and Katrina took that away from us more than anything. So, gatherings like this, poetry like that, restaurants like Vaucresson and Lil Dizzy's are so utterly important to who we are. Because it's our sense of who we are. That's my identity. And so please support.
What the 7th Ward means to me. Need to say this first of all. My mom, and this was before I was born, my mom lived, I don't know if you are familiar with the Coleman Project, back of town, somewhere around Paula Street. This was before I was born. I'm talking about 1954. And on my father's side, they lived at 1313 St. Anthony Street. Dr. Maurice Martinez, you mentioned Dr. Maurice, the Martinez School. Dr. Maurice Martinez and my father became friends, and he did a documentary, basically, I say similar to Roots. He did our family background, and he said that the Mardi Gras Indian tradition supposedly had started in our family. And I've never had a chance to really talk to him about that particular piece because there was a governor of Louisiana, Governor Bienville, who enacted the Black Code of 1724 that was forbidding blacks from wearing feathers. So that tells me if my family started somewhere wearing feathers in the 1860s, that black folks were wearing feathers long before we did. Mm-hmm. I believe that there were guys wearing feathers, but they was not organized. And I believe when my family got involved, that's where they started naming tribes. Like for instance, the Creole Wild West. My family spoke Creole. My grandmother spoke Creole. My great-grandmother spoke Creole. My father spoke Creole. I never got a chance to really learn it. But anyhow, they say that it started in our family. And let me just say this about the 7th Ward. Within me, I'm all 7th Ward. Anywhere I go, I do not deny where I come from. I need to say this, that within the tradition, when we were out on the street, my daddy was always the one. And I say this, even though I think I'm very good at what I do, I can't stand up to him because every time we meet, in fact, we were just at the thing recently at Dillon, and Mr. Darryl mentioned about how brilliant he was. He was a brilliant man. need to say this, that he transformed the tradition. Everybody basically looked the same. What my daddy did was he changed the whole game. He used his trade. He was a wire latherer. He used his trade and he transformed the flat suits and he made the three-dimensional suits. Need to say this because I don't know if you're all familiar with it. The Le Pavillon Hotel, the logo on the front of the hotel, that's my daddy's work.
Yes.
Yeah. Jack's Brewery, all that pretty work on Jack's Brewery, the skin, that's my daddy's work. So he put his work into the suits. And I need to say this, that I am very, very proud of him. I am very proud to be his son. And I represent my neighborhood as best I can.
And I just have to tag onto that. So the thing about the Black Masking Indians, and Tootie in particular, Mr. Tootie, I have to say. So when I was a kid, so he went to grade school with my neighbor, Miss Velma Leon. She married a Cerie. And so I think they went to Marie Couvent. The Couvent. And because he never, if he was masking, he never stopped coming. So that was the interesting thing about his generation. They would stop, and all you had to do was have a little fire water for them. A little refreshment, because it was on them heavy suits all day, masking, and that was during Jim Crow. We couldn't go downtown, so we called it Carnival. We never said Mardi Gras.
Right.
And we never said Mardi Gras Indians because they didn't want us to be part of Mardi Gras. It was Carnival. But the Black Masking Indians, and Tootie in particular, so as a child, I grew up watching him come to visit in the strip dressed just for us for free. And so even when I was getting my memory back, just all of these cultural traditions that we share among all of us, it's just, and yes, it was hard because we have toothless neighborhoods after Katrina, but we are still here. And we are still creating and evolving, and we ain't going nowhere. As the Masking Black Indians teacher, we don't bow down and we won't bow down. So, I have to get that. All right, is there something in particular you want to share about anything from your background or anything you're thinking of?
Well, basically it is, our whole family came from the 6th Ward and the 7th Ward. People don't know the history. It was started in the 6th Ward, 7th Ward became a grow from the 6th Ward, the 7th Ward became. And our roots in just about everything growing up was in the 7th Ward, or right on the line, like St. Peter Claver School. We all went to St. Peter Claver. And like you said in your poems, talking about St. Augustine High School, well, me and just about all my brothers went to St. Augustine High School, 7th Ward. My son, who runs Dizzy's with his wife, Keisha, went to St. Augustine. My grandson, Zachary, went to St. Augustine High School. And by the way, he was valedictorian at St. Augustine.
All right.
So, I mean, it's a different place. New Orleans is a different place. Our Black Creole culture is different than just about any place that you can name. This is our culture. This is who we are. We represent and create the best food that you could find anywhere. It's right here in New Orleans, and my family could attest to that. Our family could attest to that. And just about, going all the way back, we were talking about back in the day about our families and how people used to come like on Friday during Lent, because this is a big Catholic community during Lent. During Lent at Eddie's, we'd sell 20 gallons of oysters.
Wow.
And we'd have to have an extra 100 loaves of bread.
Wow.
You understand? Because you had to fast.
Yep.
If you didn't fast at all, you fast on Good Friday.
Yep. Yep.
So, I mean, I could go on and on and on, but I mean, I'm proud of my culture, proud of my roots, my family, and the continuation of our business that's been around for a long time, and I appreciate being here. Thank you.
Thank you. We're proud of you. And we're proud of the continuation. Julie, say something about the cookbook.
You want me to say something about the cookbook? Okay.
No, it was Julie.
Oh, Julie. I'm sorry, Julie.
She was passing the mic.
Two chefs on this side.
She just did a cookbook. That is not an easy feat. That is not an easy feat.
No, it was very hard, but it's a labor of love because I tell lots of stories about the Vaucresson family and my family who have rich histories in this neighborhood. The recipes, it's not your traditional cookbook because most cookbooks are appetizers, entrees, desserts. These recipes actually tell the story. For example, I have recipes for popcorn balls and candy apples because back when I was growing up, parades were in neighborhoods. They weren't all downtown. And so the parades passed in front of our house. So my mom would make popcorn balls and candy apples and serve them. So it's those kinds of things. It's kind of like one of those, if you know, you know, kind of books because there's a lot of things. Just like when people come into us on Wednesday, they know we're going to have spaghetti. It's one of those kinds of things. You know, when we had baby showers or parties, you didn't go out and hire a caterer. My mom she'd boil that chicken and she'd put it in that grinder with the celery and everything and make chicken salad sandwiches and we'd have to cut the ends off. She made the punch with the sherbet and the ginger ale. We had deviled eggs and of course the shrimp mold. So it's those kinds of things that are New Orleans, their 7th Ward there, and so I think everybody, when you read the stories, you'll find a little bit of yourself in there. And some good food as well. So there's some new things too. We have lots of recipes with the sausage and we have a mustard line, so there are recipes with that as well. But the stories, I think, are what'll get you.
And you can purchase it today.
You can purchase it.
What? Right here?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
I want to say this, that I did mention about 1313 St. Anthony Street in the 7th Ward. My father was born in this house. His mother and his grandmother was born in this house. How the house was purchased during the Civil War. My dad's great-great-grandmother was married to a white guy during the Civil War. He died. And she fought this country to get his pension because she was a black woman. They did not want to give her his pension. Well, after so many years, she won. She received his pension, and the house that I'm talking about at 1313 St. Anthony Street, she purchased that house with the pension. And that house has been in the family almost 200 years now. Queen and I, we're trying to get funding to restore it, to turn it into a museum. That house and my mom's house, which is right here on Villard and St. Bernard, they really need to have plaques on it. And what we've been trying to do, we keep this tradition up front, you know, because after a while, stuff starts to fade. And I retired after doing 48 years of dressing. I retired, I had an argument with my father before he died. And he said to me, he said, well, you think you're gonna do 50 years? And I promised him I would not. But I still have it in me. So once Queen and I got together, she influenced me to start back. We started back soon. I'm right now at 50 years, and This year will be 51 years. I don't believe ever again in the history of this city that a father and a son together will do 103 years.
Wow.
Not happening. And the reason why is because, and I always say this, because I've taught over 3,105 kids, because over the summer we just recently taught 105 kids at St. Noel for the summer camp. So right now I'm at 3,105, and I teach senior citizens. These are two of my students here. But my thing is different. My daddy was a stickler for it. He wanted to make sure that tradition never dies. And I'm telling you, I'm talking about 5,000 hours a year to make one suit. Every year we're making a new suit. And the thing about it is this, I've gotten my all in all out of doing it, really. After you do 10 years, my daddy mentioned too, the same thing. After he did 10 years, he had got his drills out of it. But then you get involved in your community, the people. And if it would not be for the community, the people, I probably would have stopped a long time ago. But again, in our city, we have a lot of isms, and my neighbors, when I called myself retiring, my neighbors started complaining to me, about the neighborhood. So, I'm married into it. I try to represent my community as best I can. Queen and I, we just recently came from Paris doing a concert, representing our community. And I just want to say this, that I am so blessed to have come up in the culture that we have in this city. Truly, I'm blessed.
Beautiful. Last but not least, why don't you talk about your book?
Okay.
Tell us the title. Your
This is a cookbook that it's made up of many recipes over the years, from my dad, my mom, but the main person's recipes in that cookbook is my wife, Jen.
Oh.
And a lot of people don't realize it, but I'm just letting you know. She's been the mainstay of our restaurants for the last at least 30 years.
Wow.
Huh?
Jordan.
Yeah, Janet Jordan.
Yeah.
It's a big 7.
Yeah.
Seven. Thank
Grew
you.
up, born and raised. So.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the Jordan family, and and we've been married for 57 years, so we're doing something right.
Oh,
And,
beautiful.
the cookbook is actually we decided to put it together because we had so many recipes. A lot of them we didn't want to forget. Now you could go to Little Dizzy's and get most of the food that's featured in that cookbook is being served at Little Dizzy's
All right.
by these two people.
That's
Thank you.
beautiful. Okay, questions? Any questions from the audience? From anyone? Megan?
All right, I have a nerdy cookbook writing question.
All right.
So, I'm always fascinated when people who really know how to cook and, learn from their families write a cookbook. Because I don't know any of the measurements for my family recipes. It's like, put it into the looks right. Like, how did you guys do that? How did you take those recipes that exist sort of in your head and get them on a page and get the quantities right and everything?
A lot of the recipes are from my mother, and oh my God, it was so hard. And even going back, because I had recipe testing, and there were recipes that she had gotten from her mother, and a cup of sugar wasn't really a cup of sugar, it was like a teacup so it was that kind of stuff was really hard to translate. I even had a story in there about my aunt who gave her daughter a recipe and it said, a nice piece of meat. What is a nice piece of meat? And my great aunt stood by and she said, just tell the butcher you want a nice piece of meat and he'll know what you want. But I mean, is it beef? Is it pork? Is it? He said, tell him what you're doing and he'll give you a nice piece of meat. So that part was really, really hard. And it was hard for not just translating my mom's recipes, it's hard for me too, because I'm not a measurement type of person. So I had to quantify everything, and that was one of the hardest parts. I have a lot of family recipes because if we don't share these recipes, people try to hold them close, they die off. So I have a lot of family recipes, and that too was hard to wrangle them down and get it to what it is. Because that's not how we cook.
Thank you. That's interesting. Any other questions? Any other questions? Yes. Okay, tell us who you are.
My name is Keisha Baquet. I'm Wayn's daughter-in-law. I want to say I am born and raised in the 7th Ward, in the Sacramento Housing Developments. And so I take a lot of pride in being from the 7th Ward. Wayn teases me all the time about that because when we first started dating, that was the thing I would say. You know, when you're in New Orleans, you meet people like, where you from? What neighborhood you from? That's the first thing you're gonna say. And so I told him I'm from the 7th Ward, you know, and he was like, all right, you ain't the only one from the 7th Ward. I wore that with a lot of pride, you know. And being in this family, the Baquet family, they value that a lot, family and where they come from and what they've done. I really just definitely want to publicly say to my father-in-law how proud I am and thankful to him for being comfortable to allow me to be the face of the next generation of his legacy. It means a lot. And awesome thing I want to say too, Wayn and I have been married 23 years and we had our reception here at the Autocrat. We got married on Harrison Avenue at my church in the 7th Ward, and we said, did we not? We're gonna have our reception in the 7th Ward too, and we had our reception here at the Autocrat because it was in the 7th Ward. So
I was gonna ask you, how did you develop, you know, being an entrepreneur in a cooking family, you know, was it in you before, or you were drawn into it, the love from your husband? And
well, I'll be totally honest with you, ma'am. Cooking ain't my thing. I got two things that I cook at home: the red beans and the jambalaya. And it took years before I got to that point of cooking. Wayn did all the cooking in this relationship from the beginning until after Katrina. That's when I was put in a position because his job position changed and he had to travel a lot. And I had this young kid at home. And so it became to a point I had to do something because he wasn't there. He did spoil me for so many years of just cooking. And I'm talking cooking everything because he comes from this type of family. So we ate good all the time. Or I could go by my mother-in-law and eat, you know, so I was in a good position. And then when the storm happened and we come back home, he's traveling so much, it's like, I had to figure it out in that cookbook. And talking to my mother-in-law on the phone, walking me through it. I became the go-to person for the red beans and jambalaya in the house. Like, Wayn doesn't even cook those two things at the house, you know, so the thing about the restaurant for me was, I did get an opportunity from 2010 to 2012 to run Little Dizzy's in the Whitney window that was on Paul. Yeah. So Paul had 2 locations. And so Dizzy's on Esplanade was booming, and he came to us, he said, look, I'm about to leave Porter's. Y'all wanna go over there and run it? And Wayn said, well, I can't leave my job, I'm working. And he said, well, talk to Keisha. Like that's what he said, go talk to Keisha, I think she'd be great for that. And I was at home, you know, I wasn't working at the time, and he came home and said, my daddy wants you to go run business. I was like, how? I don't cook nothing. He's like, you ain't gotta cook now, they got a staff already. You just need somebody to go over there and run it. And those 2 years, I think, really gave me what I needed to be able for what God planned, where it went the way it went in 2020. So I'm very thankful.
You do a
Thank
good
you.
job.
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Other questions? Yes.
Mr. Baquet, I want to tell you that 37 years ago, my wife and I got married, and we had our reception, our lunch reception at Eddie's.
Ah.
And it was a tremendous start to a great marriage. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, wait a minute.
At one point, it was mentioned that people were trying to work on preserving a lot of buildings and stuff like that, and like the places where a lot of these things happen. And I was just wondering, what are the biggest obstacles that you face in trying to continue that legacy?
I didn't hear, we didn't hear.
I'm so sorry, I'm very soft spoken. I'm gonna try that again.
She's
Okay.
What I said was, earlier folks had mentioned trying to preserve not just as part of culture, but some of the buildings and the places where a lot of these things were and where they happened. And I was wondering, in this sort of modern era, what were some of the biggest obstacles to preserving some of these places?
Gentrification.
Oh, yes.
Gentrification, the lack of interest in preservation, true interest. Those are probably, a lot of people come now and they buy things and they change them and people make money and that's kind of a wrap. And I know we're caught in this thing with the short-term rentals and they're trying to limit them and, it is what it is and it's gonna be what it is right now. Prices are not gonna drop and our people are not coming running back because we can't afford to live in certain neighborhoods. This is why we're trying to preserve some of the history with the house on St. Anthony and the house on Villery. It just, and I'm kind of lucky in the sense that the place that bears my father's name, Hanks, is still there on Kellerick and Robertson. It's one of the oldest continuously operating, other than a few years after Katrina. I don't even know if it was a few years. We sold it. We had it almost 50 years, but we sold it and somebody else runs it now. But these places are some of the very few. And in terms of, Buddy Bolden's house is falling down right now. There's so much of the landscape is gone that, I don't really know what to say. Gentrification is probably the biggest black eye to the city, though, in terms of that type of preservation.
And the other thing is cost. I was born and raised in a house built by the Rouzan family and slept on the bed I was born on until Katrina drowned it. And so we're talking about a house that was built in the late 1800s. So it was, by the time post-Katrina, it was pretty old. So they don't even mill wood that thick anymore. So the cost to, and then the house drowned, we had 9.5 feet of water. I live in the boat, in the 7th ward. And so when that happens, and we were 3 feet above the ground, but everything worth anything drowned. And then you're talking about plaster and lath, you're talking about mold, and I already had allergies and upper respiratory, so there was no way, and I did my research, you cannot abate mold in a porous substance like wood. So I made the hard decision to tear it down. But let me tell you, I could not find anyone to mill. For instance, I replaced all the termite damage I could see. But once I spent 15 grand gutting the house, and the prices for doing something like that were astronomical. People were just ripping you off. But every corner of the big pieces of wood, I don't know what you call them, but the frame, every corner was gone. And so they don't mill with that. It would have cost me 100 grand to re-mill that. So when you're talking about preservation of older properties, you have to have cash money to invest. The other thing is the way the city is run, in the sense that locals get a break. If you're a senior, you get a break on property taxes, and you get homestead exemption if you live in the house. But homestead exemption prices are based on values from the 1970s.
Yes.
So they haven't, and I've been trying, y'all better ask people to get your council people to get the city to increase that homestead exemption to reflect property values now. So what my dad said, when we tore it down, it was valued less than $100,000, and then I rebuilt something that's now worth, and that's why I'm still working, thank you God, not hating, just stating. But now almost $500,000 because of gentrification. And of course I dug to the shelf. I went up 15 feet. It's concrete and steel. By the grace of God, it's not going anywhere, I hope, I pray. And I finally got solar. So all I'm saying is cost. And it's hard decisions. So it's not something you can do lightly. And there's so many laws, I guess, procedures that prevent you from tackling a historic place, to refurbish it, to rebuild it, to improve it, because you have to keep it a certain way. It's cost. It's cost, and then the slow process. I mean, even to get solar, which, look, my bill went from $400 and some a month, and I'm single, to $37. But it took months for the city to get the approvals through. That's ridiculous. The solar was up, but I couldn't even enjoy it for months. So it's a slow process. So all of that. Yeah. But look, by the grace of God, I'm home. So 16 moves in 14 and a half years and 12 virtual addresses later. And that is not uncommon. And I still know people trying to get back. Any other questions? Or can we just eat? And have a drink?
Plug two things?
Yes.
First of all, Vaucresson and Little Dizzy's also donated food, so please eat up. I'm just going to plug a couple things we've got coming up, focused on Mona Lisa's book, Black Creole Chronicles, which you can get right there with the lovely LaToya, who's also our board chair. On the 23rd of November, that's a Saturday at 5:15 p.m. at the Andre Caillou Center for Performing Arts and Cultural Justice, which was formerly the St. Rosalina Church over there on Bayou Road. A local playwright named Fernando Rivera has adapted Mona Lisa's poem about her brother, Tony,
Seventh Ward Tony,
and that play will be performed on the 23rd of November at the Andre Caillou Center. So y'all come out for that one. It's another free event. And then remember those adult ed programs I mentioned at the beginning? They are actually right now writing pieces for a little book called New Orleans Chronicles that we'll be publishing.
Oh, sweet.
And yeah, it's inspired by your book.
Aww.
And that book will debut on the 14th of December at the main library at 212 Loyola Avenue. You can see the address. And you all are invited to that as well. Come see what they've been working on. I've had a chance to read a couple of the pieces, and when I tell you they're beautiful, they're reflective of their homes, they make you cry. It's my favorite event of the year. Come out and see what the adult learners have been working on.
Oh, sweet.
And thank you again to the panel.